What's going on, everybody? It's White coming at you with a brand new video, and I am very excited because today I am bringing to y'all my brand new Goblin Biker deck profile post Rage of the Abyss, and boy does this deck get so much stronger. I've already been taking Goblin on my locals like on the rare occasion that I do still go because, you know, work, stuff like that, lack of passion for the game with the new format and everything. But I've been having a lot of fun with it when I do go. I usually show up, people don't know what the Goblin cards do. They're a lot stronger than people give them credit for, and I usually end up topping or even winning the event. And now Rage of the Abyss has come along and made them so much better with 3 brand new cards, or I guess I'll say 2 because the trap card really doesn't matter, that really heighten the level of this deck. And I'm so giddy to tell you guys about it, so let's not waste any more time, and let's go ahead and get right into my Goblin Biker deck profile for the October 2024 format, post Rage of the Abyss support. Starting off with what else but the Goblin Biker monsters, we have 3 copies of Goblin Biker Doug Charger, 2 copies of Goblin Biker Clatter Sploder, 1 copy of Goblin Biker Mean Merciless, 1 copy of Boom Mock, and 1 of the brand new Goblin Bikers Gone Wild. I'll talk about Gone Wild here in a moment because of course it is a new card, but I want to talk about ratios a little bit first. So 3 Doug is pretty self-explanatory, same with the 1 copy of Boom Mock. 2 Clatter Sploder is definitely something though that I will probably not try to alter unless absolutely necessary, because I think a lot of people undervalue the 2nd copy of Clatter, because I've seen 2-2, that's what I was playing before, but I've also seen 1-2 and then just 1-1, and I might actually alter Mean to go back to 2 depending on how things go, but Clatter to 2 is just such a big thing for me, because I've had really no problems playing the 2nd one, like in terms of bricking or anything like that, because at the end of the day, he is a follow-up piece or even an extender if you have your continuous spell, but I've had multiple games where when I was playing 1 Clatter Sploder, I lost because I was only playing the 1 Clatter Sploder, and that was mainly before I got my 2nd copy because it took forever to show up in the mail and no one else had it at locals because it was hard to pull. But having the 2nd Clatter Sploder for follow-up is so good, because keep in mind, on the opponent's turn, you're typically using Doug to search for a Grand Entrance, and then on your turn, you can use it to search for, like, you know, your continuous spell or even like a breakout or something, but usually you're using that Grand Entrance to search for a Clatter Sploder, and that's very important, because that means that if your opponent breaks your board but doesn't have enough disruptions to stop you, you can guaranteed have a rank 3, which of course is usually Gabonga, and then Gabonga can add Doug, Snowball into a bunch of other stuff. And so having that 2nd Clatter Sploder for follow-up while having the 1 in the graveyard for your combo is really crucial to me in my opinion. And then of course Goblin Bikers Gone Wild is the brand new monster out of Rage of the Abyss. This card is very strong in certain scenarios, but I wouldn't bump it to any more than 1 copy, because a lot of people, including myself at first, I think I mostly did it to like clickbait the thumbnail though, said that this was like finally a 1-card combo tour guide for Goblin Bikers, but it really doesn't do anything on its own. It's only good when it's paired with other cards, such as like a Grand Entrance, or like the continuous spell, or breakout, when you summon it off of breakout, of course. But speaking of, it's mostly those situations that are where this card shines. Something like getting hit with a Nibiru, you can use breakout to summon the Gone Wild from deck. Gone Wild can summon something like a Clatter Sploder, Clatter can summon something from your graveyard, and it just helps you snowball a lot. I've been doing a lot of combos and test hands through Nib, Imperm Nib, bunch of hand traps like that, and finally this deck has the ability to play through Nib due to Gone Wild and Breakout's interaction, and you can actually utilize cards like IP a lot with the Gone Wild due to its graveyard effect. Moving on to the Goblin back row, I'm separating this more into engine than I am monster spells and traps. We have 3 copies of Grand Entrance, 3 copies of the brand new Grand Breakout, and 1 copy of Grand Bash. So I'm not sure how long ago my last Goblin deck profile was. I think it was in June. So you might notice that I'm not playing the Pile Up in the main anymore. Don't worry, I am citing it. I think Pile Up is a very good card, especially going into a Crazy Beast on the opponent's turn. However, it's really matchup dependent, and you really don't want to see it going second. There are countless times where I've lost the die roll and I go second, and I draw my hand, and there's a Pile Up just sitting there staring me in the face, and because of it, I'm unable to break the board because that could have been a hand trap or an engine piece. And so Pile Up I really wanted to keep in the side for matchups like, you know, Tenpai, Yubel if you know you're going first, Labyrinth, of course, anything that is really good at outing really important back row, or from protecting from board breakers in the case of Tenpai, which is so funny. Again, the brand new trap is honestly kind of worthless in my opinion. What it's doing is kind of just what Pile Up is doing, but without the effect to summon Crazy Beast as well, because it already has graveyard removal, so not really much to say there. There's not much to say about the 3 Grand Entrance, 1 Grand Bash. It is overall pretty standard. 3 Breakout, though, I I've had a lot of people actually ask me, what's the ratio on Breakout? Anywhere from like 1 to 3, 2, 3, something like that. I will swear by 3 currently because this card is just so good. It lets you dodge imperm, it lets you dodge spot removal, it lets you play through nib. Again, you contribute the nib token off of this. It's a starter, it's an extender, it's just so good. It's a follow-up piece because you can search it or have it set or something. And also, a lot of people forget there is a graveyard effect that allows you to bring down some really big bodies down to lower stats so that you can out them without having to use like some sort of spot removal, which is really good for something like a nib token if you don't go into Breaksword. That is it for the Goblin cards. Moving on to some of our other engines of the deck, we have our Speedroid engine, 3 copies of Terror Top, 1 copy of Tekatomborg. Nothing too crazy to explain here. I mean, it's literally the best rank 3 engine in the game and has been basically since its release. There's a reason why Terror Top was at 1 for the longest time. It's super nice to have. Opening this means you don't have to use your normal summon. You can play something like a Gossip Shadow before a Nibiru hits. You can go into your combo early and then still have a bunch of stuff, including your normal summon, to go after like a bunch of disruptions. And also because they're wins, they do synergize with things like Totem Bird, which I'm not maining, but I am kind of tinkering with it in the side to out things such as Evenly Matched. We can't forget our emergency teleport engine, of course, with our 1 copy of Nyan, 1 copy of Psychic Tracker, and 3 copies of Emergency Teleport. So, Nyan, of course, is like one of the best cards in the deck. I'm not sure if that was in my last deck profile, because I remember at one point I was peeled off of Nyan. I was like, oh, just use a little bit one more. You can already use E-Tele for, you know, your Psychic Tracker, Psychic Wielder, stuff like that, and your Ghost Ogres. Oh my god, Nyan is just absolutely insane in this deck. I mean, it's a free double body. You can keep reusing it on your opponent's turn, on your turn, as long as you're sending it to the graveyard instead of banishing it. And it's just so easy to abuse. And I guess if you really wanted to, you could use it or like a Scrap Goblin to go into Shen Shen, which is something I've been seeing, which is kind of funny. Psychic Tracker, on the other hand, isn't like super necessary. A lot of lists don't play it, especially because, you know, you kind of rather it be a hand trap sometimes, and this is a 41 card list. I'll let you know that now. So if you really want to, you can absolutely cut the Psychic Tracker. I just really like it just in case if it's in my hand. It's a really nice extender through a bunch of disruptions such as Imperm, Veiler, whatever, on like a Tour Guide or Terror Top. So I can at least have some sort of play going, and at the end of the day, in case we've already gone through Nyan and or we sided out Ghost Ogre or don't have any left, don't want to go into Ghost Ogre, blah blah blah, we still have an extra target for the emergency teleport if need be. And speaking of Tour Guide, to wrap up our actual engines, we just have the 3 copies of Tour Guide, best normal summon in the entire deck, gets you some of your best combos, gets that Mean Merciless immediately in the graveyard, and can also summon a copy of herself if necessary. I kind of wish this deck had like an archetypal Link monster or something so that I could play a Sangan engine, like a single copy of Sangan in the side, in order to add something like an Ash or a Droll. I think that would be really, really funny, kind of like what Yubel or Unchained can do. But unfortunately, we aren't privileged enough to do that, unless we just go immediately into an IP. But at that point, I mean, we're kind of missing out on, you know, doing literally anything else unless we already opened a Terror Top or an Emergency Teleport as well. But, you know, at the end of the day, Tour Guide is Tour Guide, best normal summon in the deck, and can really throw opponents for a loop when they think you're playing something that isn't Goblin Bikers. Onto the hand traps, we are playing, I believe, 12 hand traps in here. 3 copies of Nibiru, 3 copies of Ash Blossom, 3 copies of Ghost Ogre, and 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. So this is like the main reason why I'm not playing the Punk engine or any other supplementary engine like that anymore, like any big engine I should say that you have to commit to. Mainly because you kind of need way too many hand traps this format for other engines like that to be reliable, because your power level is like significantly lower than the decks like, you know, Snake Eyes, Yubel, what's the third one? Technically not Tenpai, I guess. You kind of shit on Tenpai with this deck severely. But you get my drift. Like, you know, you're significantly lower power than Snake Eye, Yubel, stuff like that. Anything with, like, the Fiendsmith engine, which you could also play in here, I guess. And so you really need to maximize a lot of your deck space to play hand traps, to attempt to stop them before they can stop you, because without board breakers or hand traps, you kind of struggle to break through a lot of the full power boards. I mean, to be fair, what deck doesn't? But it's really nice to play some of these high impact hand traps. Nib is really, really good now that Apo is gone. A lot of decks struggle to play completely through it or around it. And so, especially compared with something like an Imperm, very, very strong. Imperm's also just great at stopping things like Snake Eye Ash if they don't have a Kieran in hand. Ghost Ogre, I've noticed, is like probably my favorite hand trap this format. You can hit things like the Nightmare Pain, like the Continuous Spell and stuff like that. I think the Throne as well you can also hit. I haven't played against Yubel in a little while, but it's mainly in there for Tenpai, because hitting the field spell, especially now that it's at 1, is really, really good. And you already kind of dog on Tenpai anyway, so this is just like an extra cherry on top. And just outing a lot of monsters can end up being really problematic for people because they don't know how to extend without that extra ability to go into a body. Funnily enough, Ashe is probably the weakest hand trap here because against Snake Eye, obviously they can go like Hida, Revive It, go Princess, full combo, blah blah blah. So it's like kind of only in like other matchups you want to use it, but Ashe timed with another hand trap can be very, very solid and sometimes just completely end turns. And finally, wrapping up the main deck, we have two miscellaneous pieces of back row. One copy of Called by the Grave because we are playing a rogue deck, so you do want to end up stopping hand traps. And also one copy of Full Armored Xyz for our Full Armored Xyz package in the extra deck. Super strong card, being able to make Xyz monsters on your opponent's turn, and give protection, and trigger Dark Knight Lancer, and give the stat boost. There's just a lot of stuff that Full Armored Xyz can do. That is it for the main deck. Moving on to the extra deck, we are playing 2 copies of Goblin Biker Big Gabonga and 1 copy of Goblin's Crazy Beast for our Goblin Xyz monsters. Not playing Gruyere Trio, that card kind of sucks. I was thinking about it just to be funny and also because it helps me out nib, or nib tokens I should say, sorry. But you know what else helps out nib tokens? Break Sword, which I also threw in here just as a heads up. Also, it was like kind of there for towers, so you can punch past towers, but you also play Underworld Goddess for that, and not too many decks are making multiple towers unless it's Raid Raptor, and you already kind of dog on Raid Raptor anyway because it's an Xyz deck that really wants to have its materials. So really all you need are these 2. The second Gabonga obviously comes up because it's the second Gabonga, and then the 1 Crazy Beast is all you need because you're usually making it off pile up anyway, but if you want you can make it off of the continuous spell as well. Has one of the best graveyard effects in the game. It just kind of gets all your plays going again, and your opponent really has a hard time stopping it a lot of the time. For the Xyz armor package, my favorite package in the extra deck, we have 1 armor torpedo, 1 armor fortress, and 1 Dark Knight Lancer. Super awesome engine. Torpedo helps you go into some really great draws, which can help you extend or get hand traps. Fortress being able to detach things to add the full armored Xyz makes it really consistent, of course, but also helps you get the extra materials out from under it, such as like your Mean Merciless if you want to back in graveyard. And then Dark Knight Lancer is a very solid boss monster. A lot of people end up talenting him, kind of like my Utopic Draco Future when I play that in decks, so I find that kind of funny, but it's not really a huge deal, and when he does come up, it is really great. Spot removal, especially something that doesn't send to the graveyard, is very good this format in my opinion. For some of the more miscellaneous Xyz monsters, we have 1 copy of Bamboozling Gossip Shadow. Helps you out nib, also really good against a lot of decks, really powerful monster effects such as, you know, Snake Eyes Ashe is pretty good to hit. Even though you are giving your opponent a draw, you're also giving yourself a draw, which can help you get an extender for the next turn in case you don't stop them, or of course can draw you into more hand traps, which actually happens a lot more than you may think, and it is very, very fun to do so. We also have Cicada King, basically just a walking infinite impermanence on a very big wall because it goes up to like, what, I think 3,000 defense when you use its effect, and because it only detaches 1, you get an additional material under it to use for your Goblin Biker effects such as Cloud Exploder, which is one of the big parts about it. 1 copy of Break Sword, because I did mention Break Sword is mostly in here just for nib tokens. Like, the only reason I literally have this in the deck at all is because of nib tokens, because sometimes the nib token is just a little bit too large, and even with your continuous spell, you can't out it, even if you put it in defense position, and so a lot of the time I'd have to go for like a Typhon or something to bounce it, and then sometimes I wouldn't be able to push for game in that case. So Break Sword, super easy to make. Kind of sucks that you do have to pop one of your own cards, but you can always just set something like an Imperm, Called By, pop the continuous spell. There's a bunch of ways around having to lose a monster, so it's not really a huge deal. And then, of course, the 1 copy of Ashura King. Not only is it a monster negate and destroy, but it's also an OTK enabler, being able to do 7,500 damage on his own attacking directly. Very, very awesome. And a lot of people forget that he can attack multiple times, so even if you use one of the negates, he can still attack twice, which is a total of like, what, 23 plus 25 is like 4,800 damage. Really, really solid. The last 2 Xyz monsters are, of course, Typhon, as I mentioned, and then Zeus, because we are playing an Xyz deck. Funnily enough, Zeus hasn't come up for me in so long. I usually kind of do it as like a last ditch, but like, Zeus just doesn't feel like amazing as much as it used to, at least, because a lot of stuff just has graveyard effects or can follow up with 1 card anyway, so ending on Zeus and like not having anything to back it up kind of feels bad. But Typhon is, as always, a pretty solid card, being able to, again, out things like nib tokens, but also just being able to out problematic monsters, period, and have a very big 2,900 body that can now attack directly. Finally, for the couple of Link monsters that we do play, we have the IPSP line, because it is easily the best Link line in the entire game. game still, of course. Being able to go IEP using something like a Goblin Biker's Gone Wild to go into SP, SP Banish, and then Gone Wild trigger to attach to Gabonga from the opponent's field. Very, very strong. A lot of decks struggle to out a lot of spot removal, as I said, so getting rid of monsters on board can be really, really great. And then one copy of Underworld Goddess, because towers are a little bit of a problem in this deck, especially because you can't affect them with your, like your Typhon, your Break Sword, your Quick Play spell in the graveyard. So at the end of the day, Underworld Goddess can help you in that regard. And that's going to do it for my Goblin Biker list after the support and Rage of the Abyss. I really hope y'all did enjoy. I've been having so much fun labbing up combos for this deck, and remember, if we can hit 100 likes on this video, I will drop a separate combo tutorial video, so be sure to hit that goal if you want to see it. And I can't wait to hop into my local some more and start kicking ass and taking names. But with that being said, that's going to do it for the video. If you liked it, please sure to leave a like, as I'll put this video and the channel into YouTube recommended. And if you like this content or somewhere like it, like the rest of my deck profiles and of course that combo tutorial, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already and turn on notifications because support should know anything else and it's absolutely free. Also, notice where you're directly getting some awesome TCG merchandise in the process. Check out Tapio cards in the link down below. Use code Aurora5 for 5% off your purchase at checkout and support me financially. Also, be sure to check out my Patreon and see what you can get from my $1 and $5 tiers. But once again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. This is Aurora, signing off.